Chile here with Sirius Talis Moon Jupiter, our Venus day is being ruled by Mercury. Mercury 25, Cancer around Procyon, Moon, trining it from Scorpio, and Mars 28 degrees Taurus, Venus in the 12th house with the Sun in the 11th, and Chiron in Taurus. Let's talk about embodiment and currency. So my prediction of Chiron ingress to Taurus being a wound around fixed land and could be manifesting as quakes, which is of course on the continuum with tsunamis, has been most fulfilled to a T, and that is magnitude 9. It's some, I don't know what village in northern Russia at sea, at the only place where there is magnitude 9, and then Venezuela, Japan, and I think it was California, all at the same time. Israel Palestine is sitting on a very focal point for a once in a century quacks that can wipe a century. Um, and I kind of think that that's what the Americans are waiting for. Like that. They see this region as New Egypt, and they're probably waiting for the afterquake to take over, believing that the quake will do most of the job for them. And I believe this is also why Israel was not fully invaded. They were just waiting for the quake to do the job. There is nothing that is actually sustaining earthquake in the new buildings in Israel. Sorry, real estate investors. Um, and Israel has um, probably optimized more than innovated, but if it likes to take the credit, then it will. Then and that was the laser technologies, which could be doomed. Now, Chiron in Taurus and is basically in the eighth house for Israel, which means swept under the rug issues to do with occult intergenerational hereditary issues, psychological traumas, um, and shared wealth, where the place where a country has to either be a vassal country or be the recipient of vassal countries. Um, Very difficult for a nation to go through such a thing. And another thing that I see is how embodiment issues are the core issue around currency. And to create currency destabilization on a pretty much fixed axis, basically we had creation of disembodiment at fertility and infanthood. For youngpreneurs who are trying to combine nonlinear models, whether it's astrology or not, with investment, stocks, entrepreneurship, that's the money line. That's why the project reached a glass ceiling and then dropped. And that it didn't go past that tells me that there is at least a limited amount of like there was at least a place where I know you didn't agree to do certain things to infants, uh, that shows me of why that project met the glass ceiling and didn't break the glass ceiling. So one thing, sisters, rock rose, which is known to be exactly around these points, is basically the oil we use on the feet of the baby and the parent upon birth. And it's number one oil for traumas. I'm not selling that oil. I'm using that oil myself. Um, and the number two, understanding that is understanding what's the key factor. Because when I Google the Epstein files, I already see up to 2026 the cover up attempting to say, oh, Epstein did not run a petering. This is because we have 30 million files out, but that's just the beginning. That was just the Saturn Neptune on 0 degree Aries in 2025 6 4, and we have all the way to 2060, 2061 to be particular, before the next Saturn Neptune meeting in what seems to be the middle decan of Gemini, tropical Gemini. That's trade. We cannot understand that without the context of Chiron, and we cannot understand that without that holistic picture. Now, a lot of particular gene mutations come up. One giant thing to say about Neptune in Aries. Aries, the I am, sense of self, which we can only have in an environment that is not violating sexually, emotionally, spiritually, and so on and so forth, and financially. And that pertains to the life energy, what people call Kundalini, whether you are sexual or asexual. And now, a lot of tribes, way before monotheism, a lot of tribes used rites of passage that interfere or try to imprint, like design a DNA of the tribe and the bloodline through rites of passage that are actually violating in nature, at least towards the shamans and healers. And alongside a generation, Neptune Aries shows us how our individual life energy cannot be violated without the entire tribe, nation, or kingdom or empire going into doom, but to such doom that we may have one cooking book. Now, what we would see is various points of interferences that have to do with one thing and one thing only, and that is the inflammation that causes the malfunction of the muscles, autonomic and non-autonomic, and the unusual electric activity of the brain. Okay, just like in astrology, there can be a person that has neurodivergence, laters. There can be there can be a person that has no neurodivergence and he has one yoga, another person another yoga, another person another yoga. Now those individual interventions are treated with gene editing. There is CRISPR, and then there is like the advanced test something. And basically, whichever level of interference we use, what would the outcome need to be is retrieval to every single life energy, every single I am, having body, heart, mind, soul, sovereignty, and psychic and ether. That would change every single thing we see on art. That's a real estate. That's a real estate that would tell us where is this person. For example, I have Rao Rao right around between Svalbard and Norwegian. And as I'm growing, right now I'm 42, so I'm entering my Rahu maturation, I'm addressing particularly the neurodegeneration of the Nordic people. It just comes up on my feed. People that I haven't seen their videos in like a millennia, something pops on my feed, and then I find out, oh, I thought they were from this origin. I was like, yeah, but there's somebody from there. And there's like, oh, I was thinking with Neptune to study oceanography or something like that, because it's like Neptune in my second house. So, again, whether we use technology or whether we use, I don't know, a code that is designed at individual life sovereignty. Okay, rather an egregore being um, just a collective or a hive mind, the emphasis of an on the an egregore of sovereigns, but the egregore of sovereigns need to have sovereigns, which means we need to negate the effect of sexual boundary violation. It means that the cup that I'm drinking coffee with is probably already violating that along the line of production from the mining of the minerals or the creation of the glass. Somewhere along that line. It also means that there are no certain sectors where we can say, oh, don't work there. Don't, I don't know, don't think to buy a yacht because all those people buy a yacht. Like, if we let those people occupy the sector or the neuron of yachts, then that neuron gets polluted, that neuron gets corrupted, and then things get destroyed. Now, what happens? What do yachts do? They sell the ocean. What else do? They can fish. They can be confiscated at the time of war to be warships. Good thing, bad thing, who knows? Okay, we also talk about war and sovereignty, but this is the function of these focal points in society. Okay, assets in Monaco. Would you have an interest in assets in Monaco? I don't have any. Doesn't matter. Those places are occupied by certain particular patterns. And then when we let those patterns permeate those patterns, we see in the collective nervous system. Now, this is both the localized version of the I am and the fact that, I don't know, we can have what was it, Paris Hilton brain cell, and the system or the nervous system activation. Like I say, when I think about, oh, a person could be neurodivergent, they can have Mercury retrograde, they can have Mercury Saturn hard aspects, they can have Moon Saturn hard aspect, they have Sun Ketu. All of those are particular entry points that can yield certain type of neurodivergence. Why? Sun exalting Aries, Aries the I am, Mercury, thinking patterns, discernment patterns, nervous system, speech. Saturn, limitations, but in hard aspect, the limitation is creating a crisis of growth, which can mean the person grows through neurodivergence. Saturn retrograde. Patterns and the breaking of patterns is done in an anomaly. This means the person is neither, doesn't even rebel the way that people rebel usually. Okay? Mercury retrograde, something that were born at the time where speech and communication need to be refined. Chiron Mercuries. The wounded healer was at the time of speech. Chiron is usually more the type of medicines. You want to check where your Chiron is at, because Chiron can also, it creates the type of healing where neither the conventional nor the indigenous medicine is compatible. It's kind of like a person has to sort the wheat from the chaff and invent their own, and usually you help a lot of people in the process before they can completely see to the extent of what they're dealing with. Now, Chiron matures at around 50. To those that are Centaurians, they're going to have 2 Chiron maturations. Um, Taurus is the second sign from Aries. It's both the gains that we get from our sense of self, which is fixed land. Oops. just solve the conundrum. And it is a passage to our ability to multiply, to procreate, Gemini. An anomaly in either of the three can lead to anomaly in growth of cancer cells, cancer. Okay, if the multiplication is nourished, then it goes back to the sense of self, but from another point of view, the heart. And so what's Virgo? That's the intestines between the heart and the kidneys. So it's also the liver, which is Pisces, Jupiter, and the lungs. Um, Now, as I say, surely, but there is sidereal astrology and tropical astrology. Of course, the liver and the brain, the lungs and the brain. If our breathing is not deep enough, blood doesn't get all the way through to our brain. If our liver, if our liver doesn't get the deep breath, it doesn't function. If a liver doesn't function very well, our sense of self is permeated. This is why a lot of the drugs, Neptune, that are prescribed for mental, Neptune, and mind, Neptune Aries related issues, cause inflammation and malabsorption of minerals that prevent normal activity of the autonomic muscles and retrieve us back to the issue of why was this thing violated to begin with, and how is that connected to the finance system that's behind the creation and the research of the medicines, going back to the rites of passage and the targeting of the infants through invisible Neptune radiation, Neptune laser, Neptune Aries, precision red frequency of light that is invisible. um, I spent a decade looking into psychiatry, and then I see what's the cure for schizophrenia. Housing first, independent of ability to work and to believe the patient, and seizing the targeting of the patient. Targeting, Aries. Housing is a real estate, Aries. Independent of ability, Aries. To work, Aries. Mars, action. It's basically providing unconditional love, Pisces, that precedes Aries to Aries. Now, what's that decade? It was about the onset of the Neptune ingressing into Pisces, all the way, and then Aries is the I am. People had to say that people had to have next to the I am statement a disease to get something that supports their sense of self, whether it was studies, whether it was something that promotes their reason to be alive, whether it was housing that was connected to something that supported that reason to be alive. Because otherwise, even housing would not help. Yeah, I'm realizing it with you as I speak. None of these drugs worked. In fact, what the drugs do is starve the brain. A starved brain gets even more stress, gets adrenaline peak, and becomes a perpetrator, whether it's towards the people that harmed it or not. It basically, its use of force is all consuming because it's the sense of self, is the I am. Now think about the fact that currency is Taurus. So it's not even there that currency is harmed. But basically, this enables us to have currency or trade, even in a world where people have no sense of self that is actually sovereign. The biggest places that decide on the currency don't have that sense of self that are actually sovereign. Okay, for those of you that have been working on currency related projects or trade related platforms or predictions towards, for example, even predictions of earthquakes, but predictions, when there is this conglomerate and that conglomerate that moves, okay, then of course when a person comes with a platform or comes with whether it's AI, astrology, human design, or whatnot, that wants to have predictions and onset that will facilitate the sovereignty, the financial freedom to the people that can use it by a normal fee. Yeah, I try to go, instead of astrology, I try to go for transparency, to have a live broadcast of what a dollar can do. And I went to a company was called Eagle. I tried to do channeling and whatnot. For those that work, for those that were trying to give the message of challenging, there were also part of people that tortured me probably, and probably they were also tortured themselves. And they were not understanding the core of sovereignty, which is sexual boundaries as well. That's why people can't espionage their way into that information, because that information will be false and the points of intervention will be false. They have to start with um, and then I go to that company. Person at the desk agrees to let me sit and wait for the CEO, for the founder, for the founder, and then they tell me, well, we have big, big, big clients in private and public and public and public and public sector. That's our money. Even when you get food stamps, you pay VAT on these food stamps. Now, of course, when you work, you pay taxes. But also, when you don't work, you pay taxes. A lot of people don't know that. And I haven't even said anything about maritime law. I haven't even said anything about birth certificate. Just simple VAT. Now, what's happening at this juncture, I say even better. If we could, it's age of Aries. I basically came to the company with an initiative that could prevent its economic assassination by another company. But nobody was there to appreciate that. Pluto was up and going around the 0 degree of Aquarius. Okay? Doesn't work with sexual boundary violation. Sexual boundary violation negates the core of economy. And that's the point. It's to make everybody expendable. Okay? That's why when Warren Buffett understood so well, and he was priding himself on understanding very meticulously what is invested in, being traditional, conservative, traditional investor, invested in Epstein ring. But Epstein himself, when he was asked, how does this thing called economy work, he said, I don't know. Because he saw that fucker. He saw that what made him a billionaire, the things that shouldn't have made him even, it was not lack of competence. A lot of people like to pay. Saying that Epstein was incompetent is the same thing as saying that the girl that was harassed by her boss was incompetent at work. Is that he was generated in a system where he was probably molested as a boy. That he had to live through that system by being a perpetrator as an access to his. Now, why was Buffett invested in Epstein? Because he kept generating a list of expendable people on a global range. Now, and then, Gates say bye to Epstein, and then Buffett says bye to Gates Foundation, and then so on and so forth. But if we don't get that core issue, even 30 Googleplex files won't help. Um, and we better get it by 2060s. Because that Saturn Neptune happens on a juncture of civil society, trade, and children, even the transhumanist children. Now, this uptick and boom in genetic mutation related diseases is a rite of passage to transhumanism. I don't care if a person is human or transhuman, just the way I don't care if a person is a woman or trans man. What I care is that the I am, body, heart, mind, soul, and ether. If you think that's mumbo jumbo, the people that are in the decision making junctures, they know and practice this world, particularly ether. People can fumble with their genome all they want, but that sense of self, yeah, our cells regenerate all the time. We're not the same person as we were a year ago, a week ago, a day ago, on a cellular level, in a very real way. And Neptune Aries also addresses that. Now, what would being able to see where a dollar is at, or what is our public money doing in Eagle, where it's invested in money launder? Money launder from what? Well, one of the things that I was seeing as I was doing the prep of orgasmic birthing, not because I'm going to have a baby, but because this is an important practice for the sake of curation of the the passages, the eighth house, the birthing into life, the birthing of the next life phase. By the way, even if it's menopause, see my video on that. Was, do you know how much people pay to decide the gender of the fetus? Now, how do they create the market for that? They decide that legacy and goes through the family name that goes through the son. Yes, good enough for people to kill their infant daughters. And if people are that stupid, there's gonna be somebody's gonna cash in on that. You say, Sheila, they're not stupid, they're tortured. That is true. And that's by the way one of the most important points of interference. Now, of course, that CEO answered to me, we do not expose the data about our investors. Sounds like a legit answer that we would like to hear from any company that holds our money, but it's our public money. That we don't get to decide where it's invested, and those that do are already expendable. The smugness is the greatest currency of the generators of extortion cults and Epstein lists. The generation of an Epstein list is not just a PDF file. It's a generation of a human being. The harming of a human being for them to become. And the smugness is one of the great currencies, because if a person is smug about not being ever caught for doing so and so and so and so, then that bubble is inflated, inflated, pops usually every Saturn, Neptune or so. Whoa. Now, when we don't make the connections to every single facet in our lives, then that bubble gets inflated again. It compounds to our soil not soiling. I had an argument with a lady that was a beautiful lady, educated lady, elegant and kind, that was trying to tell me that African people are responsible for the pollution in their soil because they poop or something, and for STDs that they have. And I'm like really trying to explain to her how their soil is so much cleaner. And what the savings that she depends on when she won't be able to work are invested in fund that pollution. Not only there they can say, they can reclaim the land, they can say, oh, decolonization. But here,
לקוחות יקרים, נא לא להשאיר עגלות ללא השגחה, מאחר ואלו יפוזרו ידיעות ויאכלו. המשך קריאה בידה.
and that is okay. We have killed a head of Iranian hackers. Okay. Um, yeah, probably going to have an interesting weekend. Um, Probably that's why my mom is calling for 3 times when I'm broadcasting. Now, this is something that um, the awareness. I was speaking earlier this morning about the conversation when there is economic hitmanship between those that run away from the disasters that our countries did into our countries, because there's more like women rights in the beginning. The different cultures where there is indeed a conversation where people say, oh no, it's not just the Arab population, it's also the Israeli, or it's not just the Moroccans, it's also, I don't know, the Frisians. And um, and when we don't have those conversations, and we don't see the implications of the economic hit machine, and we have a lot of egos that are like the black box of money launder. So what is the result? The result is that I did not get to have a pitch of what a dollar, because I was thinking to give even a couple of homeless people, give them money, have them invest a shekel or a dollar, and see what that investment does in a live screen where each and every child will be able to study stocks and the markets. And when I was told, oh, there's public money running through these companies, I said, well, Aquarius is the age of transparency. If we appease transparency in Aquarius, we have the power of having nothing to hide. Unfortunately, I did not meet an investment company that was on par with me on that. Now, if you were in any way trying to predict whether it's through AI or through astrology or to whatnot, human engineering, various models that every day there's a new perspective on the world and it's fascinating, you would run into that glass ceiling of your success. This is what happened when they tried to find the cure to cancer. They found billions of cure to cancer, so they probably have billions of cures to anything psychiatric and neuro related. And then terminally ill people that had a remission had to fall back into relapse and die because we're not expendable. And this is where, okay, I am not expendable. You're not expendable, but we gotta honor that sovereignty. And this is where the funding for finding cures for cancer was abrupted upon success of the research. So imagine predicting stocks. This is why you'll always run into a bubble. If you're running an investment company, you're at the same glass ceiling. Now, just knowing that, I don't know, bullying culture, abusive culture, rape culture, harassment culture is at the core of the foundational issues of why money doesn't money, of why currency doesn't currency, is already way ahead. It is already such a tremendous point of interference. It balances the nervous system because you know what the issue is. You're staying on track. The clarity, everything 9/11's around that truth. Everything that is false. That was the point. The point was that the economy will 9/11. Now, a lot of people say we can move the money, but we need to find and understand that transactional relations can't govern peace. I saw it when I was apprentice at the Israeli-Palestinian Chamber of Commerce, and no intelligence classification was working under ex-head of Mossad or ISIS, I don't know, and I saw just the jargon, which, by the way, everybody of us was to some degree susceptible to, was interfering with my life energy, which was interfering with my um, overall well-being. And again, nobody. If things that were annoying to me, it was the jargons that people used with one another. It was not directed at me or harassing me or there to take me down. Like, I'm not even talking me to stuff. I remember I saw in another context a daughter that had fibromyalgia. What's fibromyalgia? Something to do with sexual boundary violation. We all know that. Here, it's not schizophrenia or anything like that. I mean, what's schizophrenia? Something to do with sexual boundary violation that is intermixed with fibromyalgia. And then their parents that also had inflammation issues was using sexual harassment as a joke with a person that they would meet, I don't know, at the grocery store next to the daughter. Okay, it's not something we grow consciously aware of. I probably also partook in weird language or weird jokes, but it has, even that has an effect on our sense of self and on that inflammation patterns. Now, in general, in the Israeli-Palestinian Chamber of Commerce, we're talking about a decade ago, they were trying to create peace with water interdependence. There was an idea that people like Teshuva were a part of. I didn't meet personally with Teshuva. The panels of investor, Israeli Peace Center, greatest food corporations, and that bankrupted. Why? Because the element in ether, the water, what is the water? We can't have transactional relations and have clarity of the water, Libra. That permeates to Scorpio blood circulation, psychosexual well-being, the regeneration of the water of the well. What does desert mean? Desert means stagnation. The water do not permeate the soil, and it slip over to create fluids, and then we don't have rejuvenation of the well water. How do we change that? Ask two farmers in England that had an economic hardship, and then they decided to let go of the farm, cut the fences, and let the animals roam. 25 years later, best meat ever. And if you're vegan and that disturbs you, it's also best natural food ever. Okay. I don't know if we can be vegan or not, because our access to clean soil and clean fruits and vegetables and sexual boundaries honoring and life honoring, meaning free of abuse or any economical violence stuff, is so far off that I don't even know. I spent half my life trying to figure whether it was vegetarian because I didn't hear about veganism. Then I tried raw veganism, and I was binging on um, salty pastries with cheese. and then I think there was a poor attempt to do keto, which was impossible because I didn't even have access to the healthy form of the stuff. And then I saw people that had a bone issue, and then that bone issue because they needed to eat fish or something, but then the salmon and standard oil. and, and now Neptune is in my second house. So um, now, and these things, these solutions, these point of interferences, these breakthroughs would usually come from the place that we least feel comfortable with. That's the point. It's the place that was most stagnant. That challenges the divisions that we are most predominantly accepting of. Who are the people that came up with the cure for what was it? Secular BIPOC people. They say why BIPOC people? Because they made medical experiments on them. They suffered from the disease. They found a cure. Then white folks had also genetic issues. Who are the people that already managed to cure neurodegenerative diseases? BIPOC people. We can understand where was the challenge to our mind. Um, so this is our Venus day. And I think Chiron in Taurus will definitely, particularly the back and forth between Aries and Taurus, will definitely address the big issues that are all the way through our point of origin, whether it's conception, birthing, infant phase, and the interferences in those points of origin.